Invitations arrived in plain envelopes. No seal, no signature, only a time. Only a house on the cliff. Dolly drove. Miss Marple watched the hedges nod. The wind came off the sea. Damp. The sky held back its rain. Gorseview appeared above the lane. Stone. Windows like eyes. A lantern hung by the portico. It swung. It clicked. Dolly smiled for courage. "You'll judge the flower show, Miss Marple?" she asked. "Of course, if the weather behaves," Miss Marple said. Her knitting lay folded in a small bag. Quick eyes. A maid opened. Narrow hall. Polished floor. Persian runner. The air smelled of polish and tea. Voices came from the morning room. 5 widows waited there. Mrs. Arden Vale stood like a headmistress. Mavis Holt poured with a generous hand. Olive Kirby held a prayer book. Daphne Swan leaned on a cane. Lila Trent wore midnight blue. Her locket flashed when she turned her head. Pleasantries passed. Names fixed. Little smiles. Little tests. Dolly warmed to the sherry. Miss Marple asked for tea. She added no sugar. She watched. That was enough. The house felt careful. Furniture placed by habit, not by whim. Chairs squared to the rug. Coasters in rigid pairs. Flowers clipped to identical lengths. One detail jarred. The sideboard looked right, but not quite. Miss Marple's eyes fell to the floor. The runner hid a darker strip under the sideboard edge. Faded wool. A mark where sun once fell. The sideboard should cover that strip by 2 inches. It did not. Someone had shifted it. A small slide. Recent. Deliberate. Dolly talked roses with Mavis. Daphne tapped the cane once. Twice. Olive murmured a thanks for company. Mrs. Vale watched everything. Miss Marple sipped. She looked again at the sideboard feet. One toe left a faint scuff on the polish. A fresh line. A straight line. It pointed toward the door. She set down her cup. "Your house is beautifully kept," she said. Mrs. Vale nodded. "Order saves trouble," she answered. Her tone did not soften. "Does anyone move the furniture for cleaning?" Miss Marple asked. Lightly, as a guest would. Mavis laughed. "Twice a week," she said, "but never during a storm." A clock chimed. The sound seemed louder than it should. Miss Marple measured the gap with her eye. She counted floorboards. She counted breaths. She traced the scuff to the threshold. It ended at the hall. A draught passed. Cold. Salty. The lantern clicked again. Who keeps moving furniture in tiny inches? The question sat with the tea. Dolly glanced to the window. The view had blurred. The path to the cliff went pale. The sea fog rolled in and the bell rings twice. The scream cut the house in 2. Glass shattered like ice. Then silence. Dolly looked up first. Miss Marple was already standing. The lantern clicked outside. "Don't touch anything," Mrs. Vale said, her voice held by force. "Where?" Dolly asked. "The west wing," came a whisper. "Lila's rooms." They went quickly. Lights flickered in the corridor. Doors stood ajar like mouths. Lila's dressing room waited. A lamp blinked, then held. A silk scarf hung from a chair. The nightlight lay in pieces. Lila Trent was on the carpet. Midnight blue pooled under her shoulder. One hand reached toward the table. Her locket lay flat on the rug. No breath moved her lace. "She fell, didn't she?" Dolly said. Her voice was too small. "Stand back," Mrs. Vale replied. "Dr. Haydock is on his way." "But the lines are down," Mavis said. Miss Marple knelt near the threshold. She did not touch the body. Her lamp cast a low circle. She looked at the table first, then the rug. "Look at the glass," she said. The spray ran outward from the tabletop, not inward from the floor. Large crescents lay by the edge. Fine dust fanned wide. Dolly swallowed. "So it fell," she said. "Not like that," Miss Marple answered. "If it slipped, we would see arcs. We would see prints in dust." She traced the pattern with her eyes. The fan began at one point on the table. It spread toward the doorway. Tiny chips peppered the chair seat. A few glittered on the brush. Was it dropped or driven? she asked. The room held its breath. Daphne leaned on her cane. The tip did not squeak. Her jaw set hard. Olive clutched her prayer book. She looked at the window latch. It sat crooked to its catch. The curtain hem clung to the sill. Moisture beaded on the wood. Miss Marple noted each thing. The room said more than voices. The lamp hissed once, then steadied. Dust settled in the light. "Who found her?" Inspector Slack asked. He stood in the doorway. Rain darkened his coat sleeves. His hat dripped on the threshold. "I heard the scream. Mrs. Vale said. "Did anyone enter before me?" he asked. "No," she said. "No one," Daphne added. "We were at the stairs," Mavis said. "I was praying," Olive whispered. Miss Marple looked at the table base. There was a smear near its ring, sticky, shiny under the lamp. She lifted her head. The air carried a sweet note, not floral, not powder, not the room's usual scent. It was thicker. It clung behind the teeth. It felt like syrup on breath. "Do you smell that?" Dolly asked. "A sweet smell," Miss Marple said. "Not perfume," Inspector Slack murmured. He watched where the glass lay. He watched where it did not. He did not touch the table. Miss Marple looked at Lila again, then at the fan of glitter. Her eyes settled on the chair seat. Something had struck down and forward. Hard. Sideboard. Crystal. A ring of sticky residue. Mavis stood there with the decanter. Her hand shook. Her breath caught. "I poured one at 10:30, she said. Her eyes wouldn't hold still. "And then you heard the scream," Dolly said. Mavis nodded. "I left the glass here. I never drank." Miss Marple looked at the ring. Clear circle. Sugary tack on the wood. She set a clean handkerchief on the mark. Lifted it. Threads clung. "Which glass?" Inspector Slack asked. Mavis pointed. "Second from the right. Cut. Crystal. Thin lip." Miss Marple raised it to the light. She did not touch the bowl. She did not touch the rim. She leaned close. A faint sweetness rose. Not fruit, not spice. She breathed once through parted lips. The scent stayed, low, heavy, tincture note on the rim. Medicinal, sleepy. "Who set the tray?" Mrs. Vale asked. "I did," Mavis said. "An hour before dusk, then again after supper. Did anyone change the order?" "I don't know," Mavis said. "I was back and forth. The fog came in. People kept asking for tea." Olive held her prayer book tight. "I saw a glass already poured," she said. "Where?" Slack asked. "Right there," she said, pointing to the ring. I took one step toward it. Then I heard the cry. Daphne leaned her cane against the chair. Her eyes stayed on the tray. Her jaw worked once. She said nothing. Miss Marple tipped the glass. The light showed a dull smear on the lip, a crescent, coral faint on crystal. She looked toward the stairs. Lila Trent wore coral most nights. "So the glass waited," Dolly said. "For whom?" "For someone who would drink without asking," Miss Marple said. "Or for someone who always drank last." Slack looked at the decanter. He looked at the stopper. He turned it a quarter inch, set it down again. "Who doped the house drink?" he asked. No one answered. The lamp hummed. The hall clock ticked. Sea fog pressed the windows. Miss Marple set the glass back on the tray. She moved to the mantel. A faint smear there, too. Same crescent. Same coral. A hand had steadied itself. Just once. She turned to Daphne. "You keep ointments?" "For the foot," Daphne said. "Blisters. A simple tincture. It stings, then it helps." "Where do you keep it?" Slack asked. "On the dressing table," she said. "Beside the brushes. You can smell it when the room is warm." "Fetch it," Slack said. Daphne did not move. Her mouth tightened. She reached for her cane. She stopped. Her gaze fell to the floor, then to the door. Miss Marple was already looking down the hall. She knew what they would not find. She knew what should be there. The bottle that should be on Daphne's table is gone. Lawn mud prints. Soft-soled, careful steps. Inspector Slack crouched. Measured one, small, flat tread. No heel. House slippers, he said. Miss Marple nodded. She traced the line with her eye. Each step set neat, even spacing. No rush, no stumble. The trail led away from the west wing. Across the lawn, toward the Belvedere. Fog hung low. Wind pushed once, then eased. They followed the prints. Constable Lake photographed, board by board, step by step. At the gravel lip, the shapes thinned. Then the lawn resumed. Marks returned, aligned again. Still careful. They stopped 5 yards from the Belvedere. Stopped dead. No smear ahead. No half-print. Nothing. Slack stood. Where are the rest? He scanned the stone floor under the arch. Dry slabs, leaves in corners. No marks. No prints back? Miss Marple asked. He shook his head. None. Not even one. She looked up at the sky, then down at the grass. No drift edge, no pooled water to swallow a shape. The line just ended. She turned to the hedge boundary. A clothesline sagged there, stained from weather, twine knots tidy. Not new. Constable Lake checked the path posts. One post showed fresh scars, deep, angled, metal bites. Not a rubber cane tip, Slack said. He touched the gouge with a pencil. Shavings flaked. Bright wood showed. Miss Marple watched his hand. Something hard struck here, she said. A signal or a test. Pointed. Narrow. She stepped back to the last clear print. The soil at the edge looked smooth. No. Toe dig. No drag line. Like a body lifted. Who carried the slippers past the mud? She asked. Dolly glanced at Daphne's cane. Rubber ferrule. Unmarked. Her gaze slid away. Could the storm erase the rest? Lake asked. Not here, Slack said. Wind was high, but the Belvedere floor is dry. Miss Marple peered under the stone lip. A dry strip of paving ran to the cliff path, sheltered by the overhang. No wet prints, no grit spread. So they didn't walk that way, Dolly said. Not on the slabs. Miss Marple looked to the low wall at the cliff edge. Mortar lines showed pale. Some seams older, one seam darker. Work touched recently. She stepped closer, did not lean, kept her hands clear. Slack joined her. He bent at the cornerstone. Fresh pointing, he said. Still a little soft. Miss Marple narrowed her eyes. Something caught in the joint. She didn't touch it. Slack took out his pocket knife. Lifted the speck with the tip. They both saw the color. Midnight. Fine as a hair. Frayed on one side. A blue fiber winks from fresh mortar at the cliff wall. The safe stood partly open. No forced marks. Dial at 0. Door ajar by an inch. Inspector Slack put on gloves. He eased it wider. Velvet trays. Papers. A small cash roll. 2 oval brooches lay side by side. Same metal. Same hinge. Same latch, Dolly whispered. She wore this yesterday. Her finger hovered above the left one. Then where's the photo? Miss Marple asked. Slack lifted the left brooch. Weighty. Well made. He pressed the catch. The oval back clicked. Inside sat a neat insert. Blank card. Clean edges. No image. No residue. He set it down. Picked up the twin. Pressed again. Same click. Same hollow. Another blank. Same cut. Same size. Cleanly done. Miss Marple leaned closer. She did not touch. Her eyes traced the inner rim. No fiber. No glue halo. No torn corner. Whoever removed the photo worked slow. She wore this at tea, Dolly said. By the window. It flashed. Mavis nodded. I saw it too. A bright oval. That one. She pointed to the right brooch. Safe shows no tamper, Slack said. No tool marks. No spin scratches. Someone who knew the numbers opened this. Mrs. Vale stood very still. Lila never shared combinations, she said. Except with herself. Miss Marple studied the tray velvet. 2 shallow depressions. Fresh. Pile pushed one way. Then back. These were handled today, she said. Olive clutched her book. Why keep a brooch with no photo? To hide which photo was missing, Miss Marple said, or to hide who was in it. Daphne tapped her cane once. Her eyes stayed on the safe lip. A smear glinted there. Slack saw it too. He moved the torch. Fine coral trace at the edge. Same shade as the glass rim. Same shade as Lila's mouth. Miss Marple looked at the papers. Insurance slips. A folded program. A claim stub for a camera repair. Yesterday's date stamped faint. "So," she said, "duplicate brooches. Same latch. Both emptied. Both padded with blank cards cut to fit. What image was dangerous enough to vanish twice?" No one answered. The hall clock ticked. Sea fog pressed the panes. The lantern clicked. Slack checked the safe wall with his knuckle. A dull spot answered behind the trays. He slid a nail under the seam. The panel shifted a hair. He worked it loose. A thin cavity opened. He reached inside. Paper brushed glove. He drew out a slim envelope. Cream. Handwritten. One word on the face. Inspector finds a hidden envelope labeled "Beloved." Persian rugs turned just so. Faded patch beneath. Miss Marple stood in the morning room, Dolly beside her. Inspector Slack at the door. Chairs faced the hearth at equal angles. Not casual. Measured. Habit repeated. "Order saves trouble," Mrs. Vale had said. She said it again now. Housekeeping runs on. Routine. Miss Marple nodded. Her eyes moved. Slow and sure. Chair feet sat on tiny bits of tape. Pale rectangles tucked under the front legs. Guides. Precise. She pointed. "You always set it like this?" Mrs. Vale folded her hands. "Always. For years." Dolly knelt with her purse tape. She measured the gap from skirting to chair back. 21 inches, she said. Both sides match. Mavis hovered by the sideboard. "Shall I pour a little?" "Not yet," Slack said. Miss Marple looked at the rug border. The Persian showed a wash of wear near the fringe. Sun fade. Traffic line. But a corner against the wall was darker. Protected. Until today. She crouched. 2 faint pencil dots marked the sideboard's front feet position. Old marks, smudged by years of polishing. A newer set sat forward by 2 inches. Sharper. Cleaner. "Only today," she said. "Someone used the new marks today." Mrs. Vale stiffened. "The staff dusted," she said. "Not during the storm." Mavis blurted. Her cheeks coloured. "We leave heavy pieces alone when the air is wet." Miss Marple laid the purse tape from dot to dot. 2 inches off its tape mark, she said. Her voice was mild. Her eyes were not. Olive clutched her book tighter. "Perhaps it slid," she whispered. "On its own. Drafts and such." Slack tested a foot with 2 fingers. The sideboard did not budge. Weight settled. Legs true. "Nothing slides here," he said. Daphne tapped her cane once. "You think it was moved? For show? Or for scatter?" Miss Marple said. "If glass must look fallen, furniture may follow the story." Dolly followed the rug edge with her palm. Grit brushed her skin. Not dust. Grit. Like sand. She held up her hand. A tiny crystal sparkled. "The fog came from the sea," Olive said. "It brings salt." Miss Marple looked at the window line. Sash closed tight now. Prime marks on the outer paint. "Yesterday," she remembered. "Who nudged the room before the scream?" she asked. No one answered. Slack opened the sideboard doors. Table linens. A sewing roll. A roll of painter's tape. Half used. He set it down. He checked the inner floor. Clean. Too clean. Miss Marple circled to the back. The sideboard kissed the skirting board. Just not quite. A ridge of dust should run there if it had slept in place for months. Instead, a short, bright line cut the dust, fresh as a finger. She slid a card under the gap. Drew it out. Something came with it. Tiny specks. Short fibers. Grey and blue. A few stiff as horsehair. A few soft as wool sweepings. She pressed a knuckle to the skirting. Listened. A hollow answer lived behind the wood. Not beam. Cavity. Dolly breathed in. "Another panel?" "Maybe," Miss Marple said. "Or a cable chase. Either way, someone worked here." Slack knelt. He ran his torch along the base. The beam caught a minute crumble where paint met board, an edge that had flexed, then settled. Miss Marple pinched the specks on the card. They rasped. They smelled faintly of rope and floor wax. Not old, not settled. Thread grit under the skirting, fresh. Wainscot breathes. A latch is warm. Dolly tapped the panel. Once, twice. A hollow note answered. Not beam, not brick. Miss Marple watched the seams. Paint hairline, fresh scrape at the base. The card she used earlier still held grit. Blue, grey, new. Old houses keep old paths, Dolly said. And new secrets, Miss Marple answered. Inspector Slack set his torch on low. He flattened his palm to the board, heat held in the wood. Recent touch. Someone had been here. Where? Dolly whispered. Find the weakness, Miss Marple said. Not the gap, the give. Slack pressed near the skirting. Nothing. He pressed higher, left of center. A faint click. The edge rose a breath. Knife, Miss Marple said. He slipped the blade. Lifted. The moulding tipped. The panel swung inward on small old hinges. Cool air moved out. Dry, dusty, not stale, used lately. Miss Marple did not reach in. She looked first. Torch off the eye line. No wires, no weight on a ledge. Hold the light, Slack said. Dolly raised the beam. Inside lay a shallow niche. Box edges rubbed the wood, and scrape trails on the floor of the cavity. Miss Marple took out a folded cloth. She pinched with the cloth only, one item at a time. Ledger shreds, columns in blue and black, totals cut through, dates trimmed away. A glassy grit sat in a paper twist. She tipped a few grains to the cloth. Crystal dust, not sand, edges sharp, ground fine. A twine spool lay on its side, half used. Fibers matched the hedgeline knots. Same twist, same dull wax feel. Slack opened his notebook. Who stashed this? He said. He looked at the doorway. No one answered. Miss Marple studied the niche walls. Smears at finger height. 2 sets. One small, one longer reach. Different hands, different days. She weighed the box marks. In, out, in again. More than one visit, she said. Under pressure. Dolly kept her voice low. What does it mean? Miss Marple kept her eyes on the crystal dust. 2 plans, she said. Stage a fall, or hide a theft. A floorboard creaked in the hall. Close, slow, then another, closer. Slack raised a hand for silence. He thumbed the torch to a slit. The beam thinned. The panel mouth stayed open. The room held its breath. A shadow slipped under the door crack. Paused, listened. Footsteps approach. Light dies. Midnight. No voices in the hall. Only breathing. Only wood settling. 2 silhouettes at the panel. Small lamp cupped in a hand. Shadows on the wainscot. A box passes hand to hand. Careful. Precious. Feared. You should have burned it, the first voice said. Tight. Low. Mrs. Vale. I couldn't. Not his papers. The second said. Breath caught on the last word. Mavis. Then hide the rest. I tried. Try harder. Miss Marple watched from the dark. Slack watched the door. Dolly did not breathe. The lid opened a crack. Paper edges showed. Ledger shreds. Columns cut through. Totals missing. Under the papers, a round tin. Floral lid. Sewing tin from the sideboard. Mavis's hand shook. She turned the lid. Lifted the felt. White grit under a square of muslin. Powdered glass. Not sand. Edges keen. Ground fine. Weeks of work. For the story, Vale whispered. If the brandy fails. It was only for show, Mavis said. To scatter on the floor. To make it look real. Not to... She stopped. Vale did not answer. Her head turned toward the corridor. Listening. Counting. What about the photo? Mavis asked. Gone, Vale said. Both ovals cleared. Who took them? Not now. They pressed the papers deeper. Twine spool rolled in. A scrap of tape followed. Vale closed the box. Her thumb held the latch. Miss Marple kept her eyes on their hands. Different habits, different grip. One steady, one clumsy. Tomorrow the inspector will ask, Mavis said. He will, Vale said. Say nothing. And if he finds this? He won't. Who planned the accident first, Miss Marple thought. Not the brandy, not the scatter. The idea. Footfalls clicked on distant stone. Both women froze. They slid the box toward the niche. Lamp went lower. Shadows tightened. Quick, Vale said. Take the key. Mavis whispered. The box lid clicks, and a key drops to the floor. A silver comb beads with tiny droplets. Morning light. Clean table. Wet metal. Miss Marple did not touch it. Not yet. She watched the droplets sit. Perfect. Round. Too clean for dust. Dolly leaned in. Rain? Not this taste, Miss Marple said. She lifted the comb with a folded cloth. Turned it once. The teeth caught the light. Moisture clung inside the scrollwork. Not from a kettle. Not from the room. She touched a fingertip to a bead. Brought it to her tongue. Salt. Sharp. See on the lip. Inspector Slack frowned. The windows were shut at dawn. So we are told, Miss Marple said. Dolly pointed. Look there. A tiny dark thread slept in the carving. Not thread. Not lint. A green filament like seaweed, fine as hair. Flattened where the metal hugged it. Mavis stared at the tray. It was dry when I laid things out, she said. Your hands? Slack asked. Washed, she said. No garden, no beach. Olive clutched her book tighter. Maybe fog, she tried. Fog leaves grit, Slack said. This leaves taste. Miss Marple placed the comb on the cloth. She checked the table beneath. No ring, no wet halo. The droplets came with the comb, not from the room. Who brought it wet? Dolly asked. Not a servant, Mrs. Vale said. Trolley wheels would mark the carpet. They did not. Miss Marple looked at Lila's other things. Lockets, earrings, a folded handkerchief. All dry. Only the comb was wrong. She followed the sight lines to the window. Sun pushed at the sash. The paint on the inner groove showed no scrape. The catch sat straight. No chip. Did the sea come in, or did the comb go out? Miss Marple asked. Slack crossed to the sash. He checked the screws. Untouched. He checked the lower rail. Intact. Miss Marple stepped back. Outside, she said. Let's see the other face. They went onto the terrace. Wind hissed low. The fog thinned. Sea ran iron-grey below. Slack leaned over the sill from outside. He ran his thumb along the outer paint. Stopped. There, he said. Miss Marple saw it. 2 thin arcs near the lower edge. Paint shaved. Wood bright. Not age. Not weather. Tool marks. Wedge shallow. Lifted once. Set down again. A sash. Window shows pry marks on the outside. 10 o'clock. Power flicker. 10. 30. Scream. 11. Panel meeting. Inspector Slack drew 3 lines in his notebook. He underlined each. We stay on the clock, he said. Alibis overlapped. Gaps remained. Olive folded her fingers. I was praying. Her eyes stayed down. Her door had been ajar. Daphne held her cane. I was reading. A book lay on her table. Page turned at 10:28. Mavis looked at the mantel clock. I was rearranging the flowers. Her voice thinned on arranging. She did not meet Dolly's eye. Mrs. Vale stood straight. I was making rounds, checking windows. Routine. She did not offer minutes. Not yet. Constable Lake noted each claim. Miss Marple listened for the parts that did not sound like habits. She heard them. Which flowers? She asked Mavis. The hall arrangement, Mavis said. The big vase. Before the scream? Yes. They went to the hall. Tall glass sat on the table. Roses tight. Fern high. Stems cut fresh. Miss Marple touched the vase lip. Damp. Clean. She tipped a drop onto a spoon. She tasted. Not perfume. Not metal. Salt. Briny, she said. Not tap. Mavis flushed. I rinsed it, she said. In the scullery. With what? Slack asked. Water, she said. From where? She did not answer. Dolly sniffed the stems. Her face changed. "Smells like the shore," she said. "Like the railings in summer." Miss Marple looked at the hall runner. No puddle marks, no drip trail. Whoever carried seawater dried before they crossed here, or used another way in. "Storm window," Slack said. He pointed toward the side yard. "Kitchen path, service door, shortest run." They checked the scullery. Sink dry. No salt rim, no sea grit. Buckets stacked. One sat slightly off its ring of dust. A thumb smear on the handle. "Who crossed the yard in the storm?" "Window?" Miss Marple asked. Mrs. Vale said nothing. Olive clutched her book. Daphne's jaw set. Mavis looked at the floor. Slack scanned the tiles. Nothing wet now. He checked the back step. Wind had cleaned it. No prints, no grit. He opened the boot cupboard. 4 pairs lined up, polished. 1 pair dull with a faint smear at the welt. He touched the welt. It rasped. He slid the tray they sat on a few inches forward. The tray stuck, then moved. Under the lip lay a thin drift. Not dust, not ash. He pinched it. Fine grains. Sharp. Pale. Slack lifted the boot tray. Fine sand. Soft music. 1 breath. A gentle pause. "Who looks guiltiest right now, Arden, Mavis, Olive, or Daphne? Take a second. Check your notes. Feel the room. Type your pick. Don't spoil the trick. Just a name. Just a hunch. Remember the inches." The sideboard moved. 2 inches off its tape. Habit broke. Stories crack there. Watch the furniture inches. Watch the shoes. Mud on no tiles. Sand under the tray. A steel tip, not rubber. Footprints that stop. Hands that carry. Who set the glass? Who shifted the room? Who crossed the yard? Who timed the scream? What moved first, the glass or the room? Answer that. The rest follows. Ready? Deep breath. We return to the hall. We return to the prints. We return to the comb. Back to the case. The doped sherry sat ready at the sideboard, waiting, sweet on the rim, heavy in the air. Olive stood there first, hands tight on her prayer book. "I poured," she said, "for my nerves. I left it when I heard the cry." "So who drank instead?" Dolly asked. Silence. Only the clock. Inspector Slack lined the glasses. He set them in a row. He pointed to the second from the right. "The ring mark on the wood," he said. "This is the spot Olive named." Miss Marple leaned close. She turned the glass with a cloth. A faint crescent gleamed. Not water. Not sugar. Coral shade. Lila's. "Lip print on the wrong glass," Miss Marple said. "Wrong place. Wrong mouth." Mavis swallowed. "She always took a small one," she whispered. "Before bed." "Who poured it?" Slack asked. "I set the tray," Mavis said. "Twice, but I didn't place her lips." Miss Marple tapped the decanter stopper. It rocked and settled. "Someone doctored the sherry early," she said, then waited for the right hand to lift the right glass. "Olive's hand," Dolly said. "That was the plan." "Perhaps," Miss Marple said, until the plan moved. She studied the sideboard edge. Tiny coral on the carved scroll, a steadying touch, a reach, a turn. "Olive, when you left, did you shout?" "No," Olive said. "I ran." "So the tray stood," Miss Marple said, "and a quiet room chose a different drinker." "Did the target change at the last second?" Slack asked. "Or did someone change the glass?" Dolly said. "Or the place of the glass," Miss Marple said. 2 inches can change a story." They walked the path of steps. Sideboard to hall, hall to stair, stair to Lila's door. No drips. No slosh on the runner. In Lila's room, the scent lingered. Sweet, medicinal, sleepy. Miss Marple looked at the sash, at the catch, at the lower rail. She lifted the lamp. There it was. A thin curve on the brass, smudged to the right. Coral, same shade as the glass. A coral smear on the window latch. Prints stop short of stone. Then nothing. They stood at the last mark. Grass damp. Air still. Belvedere ahead. Dry slabs under the lip. Miss Marple looked up, not down. A line ran between two hedge posts. High, taut, stained by weather. Dolly frowned. Clothesline? Or a carry line, Miss Marple said. Inspector Slack tested the sag. It barely gave. Knots neat. Fresh burn on the bark where it bit. Constable Lake took a length from his pocket. Twine. From the secret panel. He held it to the hedge line. Same lay. Same dull wax feel. Same fleck of blue lint trapped in the twist. He clipped a knot shaving into an envelope. Lab will match, he said. It will, Miss Marple answered. She traced the path in the air, from the last mud print, across the gap, to the dry stone strip under the overhang, a clean route above the mess. Why no prints on the slabs? Dolly asked. Because weight never hit them, Miss Marple said. Feet didn't go there. Hands did, Slack said. Hands carried. They checked the guideposts again. One post showed old weathering. The other had a bright gouge. Metal bite. Narrow. Angled from below. Signal point, Slack said. Or anchor. Both, Miss Marple said. She walked back to the hedge. Found a short tail of twine tucked behind leaves. Cut clean. No fray. Someone struck fast after. Lake measured the heights. The line would clear a body at shoulder level. If one end was lifted, if two people worked it, or one with leverage. Who rigged a dry path above the mud? Miss Marple asked. Someone who knew the yard, someone who tests posts, someone who brings steel to wood. They returned to the house. Daphne's door stood open. Her cane rested by the chair, rubber ferrules snug. Unmarked. Miss Marple opened the drawer of the small table. Neat inside. Polish cloth. Spare tips. 2. She set one on the table. Soft. Black. Rubber. She set the other beside it. It caught the light. Cold. Scarred at the edge. The cane ferrule in Daphne's room is rubber, but the spare tip is steel. Another night. A rattled latch. A creak at the panel. Trap is set. Slack waits in the dark. Miss Marple beside him. Dolly by the door. Lake at the stairs. The niche sits half open. Box inside. Nothing else moves. A shadow slides across the skirting. Soft steps. Measured breath. Slack's hand lifts. Now, Miss Marple shakes her head. Hold. The shadow enters the beam gap. Right shoulder first. Hat brim low. Face turned away. A gloved hand reaches. Right hand only. The left stays tight to the ribs. Close. Guarded. Fingers find the niche lip. Test. Lift. Pause. Now? Lake whispers. Hold. Miss Marple says again. Her eyes never leave the elbow. The sleeve shows in the slit of light. Neatly abraded at the point. No loose threads. Clean wear. Regular. The hand slides under the box. Weight shifts. A key kisses wood. Tiny ring of metal. Stops. Slack leans forward. The shadow freezes. Breath catches once. Then the box moves again. Right hand only, Miss Marple murmurs. Note the set of the shoulder. Dolly nods. She sees it now. The left is useless here, or occupied when it matters. Whose right sleeve is neatly abraded at the elbow? The question hangs. Not many fit. One fits too well. The box clears the niche. The right arm locks. The elbow turns outward for leverage. Exact. Practiced. Slack straightens. Now. The switch snaps. Light floods the panel mouth. Eyes widen. Tape marks say yesterday. Sideboard says today. Dolly measures. Marple counts. Purse tape along the skirting. 21 inches to the chair, Dolly says. Matches left and right. She slides to the sideboard feet. Old pencil dots. New pencil dots. 2 inches forward. Miss Marple kneels. She counts the boards. She notes the shine. Fresh drag line. Straight. Short. Inspector Slack watches. You slid it to catch glass, didn't you? He says. To fake the scatter. No one answers. Miss Marple opens a paper envelope. She tips a pinch to a saucer. Shards glitter. 2 colors of age. Some edges bite. Some edges dull. From the rug fringe, she says. From the dressing room. From the panel niche, Dolly adds. Slack nods. Real blow drove new shards into skin, he says. Old powder hid it. Mavis' breath snags. Olive's fingers whiten on the book. Daphne's cane does not move. Miss Marple points to the rug border. See the fan, she says. Outward from the table edge. To the door, Dolly says, not back toward the hearth. Slack steps to the sideboard. He rests a ruler across the top. If this sat 2 inches back, he says, the fan would miss the leg. He moves the ruler to the new dots. Here, the fan meets the leg. It looks right. After the fact. Mrs. Vale stands very straight. Cleaners, she says. Drafts. A slip. Her eyes never leave the glass on the saucer. Miss Marple holds up a larger crescent. Fresh, she says. Wet once. From blood. Edges still bright. She sets it next to a dusted grain. Old, she says. From weeks of grinding. Slack looks from dots to fan. Who knew the pattern of true impact? He asks. Not who sprinkled, Dolly says softly. Who aimed? Miss Marple touches the sideboard top. Her glove picks a smear. Fine grit. A single coral speck. Hands moved this after the scream, she says. Hands that had touched the room upstairs. Slack turns back to the rug. He opens his mouth. The fan shows the point of origin, Arden says. Before he does. Fresh mortar. Blue thread. Wind screams below. They stood at the Belvedere wall. Stone. Old joints pale. One seam dark. New. Constable Lake touched the joint with a matchstick. It dented. Came back slow. Not last week, he said. Today. Or close. Miss Marple looked at the corner. The same corner that held the fibre. Midnight blue. Fine as hair. Caught where the seam turned. Workman came last week, Dolly said. Not for this, Slack answered. He ran the beam along the coping. No other fresh lines. No tidy run of pointing. Just this one seam. Just where the view breaks. Who called them back? Miss Marple asked. I did, Arden said. Too fast. Slack turned. For what? Loose stones, she said. Unsafe. The fog makes edges wet. Receipt? He asked. Arden hesitated. Filed, she said. In the desk. Lake went. Returned with a folded slip. He gave it to Slack. Slack read once. Then again. Today's date, he said. Afternoon. After the death. Arden's mouth pressed flat. They were here anyway, she said. I told them to tidy the worst seam. Miss Marple watched her face. No surprise. Only calculation. Why this seam? Dolly asked. Because it shows, Arden said. Guests see it. Or because we will see it, Miss Marple said. And think old. Slack scraped the edge with a knife tip. Grit came free. A soft crumble. Not cured. Not set. He lifted the speck in the light. A blue filament clung inside. Same shade as the dressing room thread. Same snag as before. Point a scene after the crime, Miss Marple said. Make the fresh look old. Make the old look fresh. Why? Dolly asked. To shift time, Miss Marple said. To make us stand in the wrong minute. Lake checked the parapet base. 2 smears where hands would brace. Fine grit. Salt. Coral dust in one line. He bagged both. Slack looked at Arden. Who told them exactly where to point? I did, she said. By the corner, Slack said. By the fibre, Miss Marple added. Arden said nothing. Miss Marple turned toward the garden path. Potting shed door stood on the latch. A fresh scrape marked the sill. Soil swept yesterday. Not today. She stepped inside. Shelves. String. Old tools. Newer ones. Hung clean. On the bench lay a small trowel. Damp along the blade. Mortar kiss at the tip. Blue fuzz on the handle. Marple lifts a small trowel from the potting shed. Slippers to the mud. Body to the stone. Shoes carried high. Inspector Slack faced the lawn. Miss Marple stood at his side. Dolly kept the notes. The prints are not a walk, Miss Marple said. They are a picture. Someone painted them. She pointed to the neat line. Soft, sold, even spacing. No rush. No stumble. First move, she said. Slippers on the feet. Guide her to the grass edge. Make the first dozen marks. Then lift. Slack nodded. Lift. How? The hedge line, Miss Marple said. Twine pulled tight, a carry line. You raised one end. You kept her weight off the ground. He looked to the post. Steel bite marks. Fresh. A signal in the dark, he said. Or a brace point. Both, Miss Marple answered. The steel tip struck the post to fix the height. Right arm working, left arm holding. They traced the air path. Last print to stone lip. Over the clean slabs under the overhang. No foot touched. No grit spread. You guided her, Miss Marple said. Her voice was quiet. Drowsy, barely walking. Dolly wrote the words. She underlined them twice. The room gives us the rest, Miss Marple said. Coral on the latch, salt on the comb, twine fibers on the hedge, fresh mortar with dress thread. She ticked each item with a finger. Coral on the latch means a hand at the window, not opening from inside, steadying from outside, by someone who had already touched the sherry tray. Salt on the comb? Slack asked. Taken to the sea rail, Miss Marple said. Brushed back a stray lock after the wind. Droplets rode the metal home. Twine on the hedge is our path, she went on. Same twist as the spool in the panel. Same wax. Same blue lint caught in the lay. And the mortar? Dolly asked. Pointed today, Miss Marple said. After the death. To age the scene. To make us think the corner had always snagged her dress. But the fiber is new. It belongs to last night. Slack looked at the Belvedere edge. At the end, he said. You took the shoes. You carried them. High. No marks down the slabs. Miss Marple nodded. She wore slippers to leave the picture. She reached stone half asleep, a hand on her elbow, a hand at the small of her back. One push would not need a run. They stood silent for a beat. Wind pressed at their coats. Sea pulled and fell. Who had strength? Miss Marple said. Keys to every room and the house map in her head. Slack did not answer. He opened his palm. Metal lay there, worn smooth by years. Cold. Exact. The chairwoman's master key glints in Slack's palm. Blackmail, yes, but also trusteeship. Missing funds. Reputation. Papers lay on the table. Slack spread them flat. Dolly held the corners. Miss Marple read the headings. Trust accounts. Maintenance fund. Widow's stipend. 2 columns short. Not one deficit, Slack said. 2. He tapped the totals. Hidden under repairs. Moved again under miscellaneous. Mavis stared at the floor. I signed the petty vouchers, she whispered. Petty is not this, Slack said. Someone stacked the books above you. Miss Marple lifted the cream envelope. Beloved, in Lila's hand. She eased out the deed. Old paper, clear terms. 3 signatures required for transfers. Chairwoman countersigns. Behind it, neat pages. Amendments. Typed. Initialed. Arden Vale. Papers prove a second deficit, Miss Marple said. Not Mavis's alone. Arden's mouth thinned. Funding gaps happen, she said. Timing. Delays. Or siphons, Slack said. Miss Marple held up a small card. Photograph docket. Camera repair stub. Yesterday's date. Lila photographed something, she said. Something she meant to keep safe. She photographed you, Dolly said to Arden. She priced your silence, Miss Marple added. Arden looked at the brooch tray, at the 2 empty ovals, at the blank cards cut to fit. She said nothing. What was? The price? Slack asked. Restore the money? Step down? No, Miss Marple said softly. Lila kept leverage. She wanted compliance first. Proof later. Olive clutched her book. Why not pay? She whispered. Why kill? Dolly asked. Why now? Miss Marple set the deed beside the amendments. She pointed to a date. A scheduled review. Independent auditor. Tomorrow. Slack turned the ledger shreds. Numbers matched the holes. Handwriting placed authorizations. Not Mavis's hand. Not the clerk's. Chairwoman's initials next to transfers. Keys to all rooms, Miss Marple said. Authority over accounts. Access to safe combinations by protocol. She lifted the empty brooches. 2 photos gone. 2 blank cards inserted. Not haste. Method. Arden's chin lifted a fraction. Lila made mistakes, she said. She used people. She used the truth, Miss Marple said, and the truth was inconvenient. Slack's voice hardened. You dosed the sherry meant for Olive. Lila took it instead. You shifted the sideboard to fit the glass fan. You carried her along the hedge line. You pointed the wall to misdate the snag. You hid the twine and the dust. And you thought the books would pass another month. Arden said nothing. She watched the envelope. She watched the deed. She watched the empty ovals. Miss Marple's gaze held steady. Why kill now? Why not pay? She asked. Arden's hands tightened. Her eyes broke once toward the clock. Because the audit was tomorrow, Marple says. Everyone seated. Windows shut. No sea. No wind. Miss Marple stood. Inspector Slack waited. Dolly held a pencil still. The paradoxes, Marple said. 1. The glass. Spray from the table, not the floor. Old powder mixed with new shards. Sideboard shifted 2 inches to prove a fall. 2. The drink. Sweet tincture on the rim meant for Olive, but Lila's coral on the wrong glass. Target switched by position, not by chance. 3. The path. Slipper prints that stop. No return. A carry line over the mud. Twine from the panel. Steel struck the post. 4. The window. Primarks outside, not in. Coral on the latch. Salt on the comb. Sea first, room after. 5. The wall. Fresh mortar dressed to look old. Blue thread caught in the seam. Receipt dated today. A timeline pushed forward to mislead. She turned to the table, laid the proofs in a row. The steel tip, she said, matches the gouge on the post. The trowel grit, Slack added, matches the Belvedere seam. The coral, Marple said, matches the window latch. And the twine fibers, Dolly said, match the hedge line. Marple faced the chairs. You dosed the sherry. You staged the glass. But you also walked her out. Silence. Breath. Nothing else. You had strength, Marple said. Keys to every room. And the house map. Her eyes settled on Arden. Arden stared at the brooch tray. At the empty ovals. At the deed. At the amendments. Final doubt? Slack asked. No one spoke. Arden's hands tightened. Her gaze lifted. Something gave. Arden breaks. She would have ruined us all. Order returns. Tea cools. Voices soften. Mavis weeps. Olive prays. Daphne sits at last. Arden is led away. Slack signs the book. Lake closes the door. Miss Marple stands. Hands folded. Eyes clear. Small details tell large truths, Marple says. No one argues. No one looks up. Dolly moves to the sideboard. She checks the pencil dots. She nudges the feet back. Click. True tape line. Back where it belongs. Cups are gathered. A tray lifts. Chairs settle. Mavis wipes her eyes. I only signed, she says. I thought it was routine. Olive nods once. Routine can hide sin, she whispers. Prayer must not. Daphne holds her cane. The rubber tip rests. The steel tip stays in the drawer. Miss Marple glances at the rug, at the hall, at the window latch cleaned at last. Little habits, she says. They tell on us. They always do. Dolly brings the teapot. The steam is thin now. She pours anyway. Next time, Dolly says, we look sooner. We will, Miss Marple says. We know what inches can do. The house is quiet. The bell does not ring. The lantern does not click. Clue remains, small and plain. Dolly straightens the sideboard to its true tape line. The room feels honest again. What tiny habit hides the next secret? Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed tonight's mystery, like and subscribe. Tell me the first clue you noticed. Tell me the moment it clicked. Tomorrow, we'll notice it sooner. Join me then.